Hello, and welcome back to our webinar series on product management training with Ftrack. This is session 2, where we will be going over how to set up Ftrack Studio projects. In our previous session last week, we focused on custom workflow schemas, which you can get access to by speaking to your sales development rep or CSM or anybody that's been in contact with you so far. I know we've told you a lot about it. My name is Michael Sears, and I am one of the sales development reps for the Americas at Backlight, and I'll be one of your hosts for the webinar. Joining me is, once again, Kyla Laban, who is Backlight's solutions consultant. A bit on her, Kyla comes from an extensive background in visual effects and TV and has worked for well-known studios like MPC and Method, and has worked on projects like WandaVision, Ghost in the Shell, Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, and a lot more. We'll be running through 4 key areas. The first will be creating a project. Second will be understanding task sheets. Third will be scheduling and tracking. And fourth will be task tracking as an individual user and not as an individual user. Kyla will be running the webinar. We do expect this one to take the full time because it is kind of the bread and butter, but please use the Q&A panel at any time throughout the presentation. We'll try to respond either during or at the end of the webinar. And even if we don't get to you during this hour, we will send you an email. But you can also join our office hours in 2 days, which is at this same time, actually, for more specific questions. But anyway, let's begin. Over to you, Kyla.
Thank you, Michael. So welcome back, everyone. As I mentioned at the beginning of last session as well, this is the first time that we are presenting this training content in a webinar format. So same as last week, we'll be sending out an attendee survey afterwards. We would really appreciate receiving your feedback. Please let us know what works in this format, what doesn't work in this format. We want to make sure that as we continue to present more of these, because we will, we're actually going to be continuing this series after the holidays. We'd like to make sure that if we need to make any adjustments to the way that this is being presented, we can do that so everyone can get the most out of these sessions. And with no further ado, since we do have a lot to cover today, we are going to get started. So as Michael has already mentioned, we are going to be setting up a project. So that workflow schema that we started building out in last week's session, we're going to be taking that, creating a project with it, starting to populate it with everything that you need, and start configuring the entire project in the task spreadsheet so that you can monitor your projects properly. Before we dive into all of that, however, we're just going to do a very, very quick recap of actually creating a project and creating some objects as a little refresher. And I went to the wrong slide. There we go. So let's hop back into our workspace. And for today, I'm actually defaulting back into my little bit messier workspace for this particular session. So for everything that I'm going to be doing, I'm defaulting back to the VFX workflow schema. If you'd like to continue following along with the custom one that you started building out last time, please do so. All right, so if you need to create a project, you're going to go to projects up here in the top menu and click on that, and then click on create new project over here. You'll give your project a name, and your code will get populated automatically. If you do want to change this, you can, but just please a reminder that this needs to be accessible by the API and integrations if that's something that you're doing in your studio. So it needs to be all lowercase, no spaces, no special characters. If you set your workflow schema as the default for your workspace, it will populate here automatically. A little reminder, if you need to do this still, in your system settings, select under the schemas area, the workflow that you want to be the default, and just click this button right here, set as default. If you didn't do that, no big deal. You can select the schema you want to apply to the project from the drop-down list. You'll set a start and a due date for your project here. I'm going to push this out quite a bit so that we can play around with some of our scheduling tools. There we go. We are still ignoring private access. We're not going to be talking about this today. And we're going to hit create project. We'll then hit go to project. And you can see that I've got my nice empty task spreadsheet that I can start working with. So to start adding some objects, I'm going to click the Create button. I'm going to keep this fairly simple, just create a few different things. So let's make a sequence, and I'll give it a name. There we are. And if I want to populate some shots inside this sequence to kind of match with that hierarchy we were starting to create in our workflow schema last time, I'm going to select the sequence. Reminder, you can tell which row you've selected in the task spreadsheet by where this little purple line is showing up on the edge of the row. I'm going to hit Create again. This time I'll grab a shot, give my shot a name. And I can also apply one of the task templates that we created at this time as well. So that's up here, and I'll grab my shot template. And you can see I've now got a shot with all of those tasks attached to it. I can also add a shot to the sequence just by right-clicking on the sequence itself, going Add, and adding a shot. And also a reminder that you can copy and paste objects to help you populate it a little bit more quickly as well. So I'm on this shot row here, you can see, and with hotkeys, I'm going to do Command-C. If you're on a Mac, Windows, it will be Control-C. I'm going to highlight the sequence again, and I'm going to do Command-V or Control-V. And you can see that I've now pasted that shot. I can do that as many times as I need to create as many shots as I need here. And another reminder to make sure that you change the shot name before you save anything, so you don't get an error letting you know that you've got multiple objects with the same name on the same level of your project hierarchy. So just quickly update that there. And save. And now if we need to apply a task template across all of those shots all at the same time, I'm going to hold Shift and select them all. So you can see I've selected all 4 of those shots. I'm going to right-click, go to Task Templates, and I can select whichever task template I want to apply to those objects right in the task spreadsheet. And there we go. I've got all of that set up, and we've got a little bit of objects created in our task spreadsheet. So that's just a little refresher of some of the things we went over at the end of last week's session. And today, what we're going to be going over is, of course, how to assign and schedule all of those tasks that you have started creating. We have a Gantt scheduler tool that I'm going to show you. It's got some little overlays that you can apply to it for some color coding. We're going to go over attributes. So when we're talking about attributes in Ftrack, that is referring to these columns here that are going to be holding all of the information that you need to track against your tasks and your objects. So things like your due dates, who's assigned to it, what status it has, and you can add and remove these to the task spreadsheet depending on what information you need to be able to see. We're also going to go over how to sort, group, and filter all of the information that is in your task spreadsheet so that you can find whatever is relevant to you more quickly. And of course, you can also then share all of that information out by creating different views and saving them. So we're going to be going over all of that today, which is quite a lot. So we're going to be probably taking the full hour, but we'll try as best as we can to leave a little bit of time for questions at the end. Before we dive into this, though, there are just a few little areas in the task spreadsheet that I just want to highlight in terms of just being able to navigate a little bit better. So I'm going to go back to Napo for a minute. So we have a little bit more data here to play with. So the first thing I'm going to show you is the outliner, which is over here on the left-hand side. So you may notice that this list of objects matches these objects here. That is the top level of the hierarchy in my project. And I can click on these to basically filter down the task spreadsheet to the specific area that I'd like to focus on. So if I only want to see my asset builds, for an example, I can just click on that folder on the outliner over here. And you can see that in the task spreadsheet, I've just filtered down and I'm only seeing my asset builds. I can also do this on a sequence if I only want to see that sequence. So there you go, you can see there. Or if I want to even just filter down to one specific shot, even I can do that right there. There we go. So you can see that's just a quick way if you just want to focus on smaller sections of your project, you can quickly filter down depending on how it's been structured. To remove these filters, just click on the project name in the top left corner. And you can see that that's brought back the entire hierarchy here. The other quick filter we have are these hierarchy filters right over here underneath where it says dashboards, these three icons here. So right now I'm on the hierarchy view. I'm seeing everything that exists within my project hierarchy straight from the project level. If I want to flatten this a little bit, maybe I just want to see everything from the shot level and below, I can go over to the shots tab here. So you can see now, if you look at the type column, I'm just seeing everything from the shot or the asset build level with the tasks nested underneath. So I've just flattened that hierarchy a little bit, but I do still have context for which sequence all of these objects belong to in the naming here. Or if I want to flatten it even more, I can go down to the tasks view. So I can just flatten this down and see everything from the task level only. So there we go. You can see that now I'm just looking at everything from the task level. You can see that clearly here. And still, again, we're seeing if there is which sequence and shot this is connected to. If I don't want to see this information in the task name, up in the task attribute column header here, you can see there's a little drop down arrow. I can go into cell formatting and go to simple path. You can see now I'm just seeing the task name itself. So if that's something that you want to do, you can change how that's being displayed right there. Let me go back to our full hierarchy. So that's just some quick ways that you can filter and display information differently. And the last thing I'm going to cover, just because we're not really going to be talking about it in detail today, we will be going into it more when we go into the review features, but that is lists. I'm just going to touch on very, very quickly. So you can use lists to group together objects that maybe you don't have common data that you can filter on. So that you can easily refer back to it. So I'm just going to hop back over to the shots view here. Let's say, I think this is a pretty common example in our industries. Let's say you have maybe a trailer delivery that you have to do for your client. Obviously, those shots may not have something in common that you can use to easily filter to find them. So you can use something like a list to be able to easily refer back to just the specific shots that belong to that particular delivery. So I'm going to just select a few shots at random here. There's nothing really linking those together. So I've got my little selections that I've made, and I can either right click here and go to lists to create a list, or there's also this icon up in the top right here. So I can say create from selected. So let's say this is trailer delivery. And I can categorize it. This is something else you can configure in the system settings. So I'll put that with deliveries, let's say, and I'll hit create. So I've successfully made my list. And over here in the deliveries area on the side, I now have my trailer delivery. And if I click on this, you can see that it's just now filtered everything into only the shots that I added into that particular list. So these are just some tools that you have available to you to help you display information in different ways that I wanted to highlight quickly before we dive into all of the project setup. So let's go back to the project here and dive into the rest of the stuff we can do in the task spreadsheet. So I know that so far we've been doing a lot of populating everything in the web UI. And I know that there are probably some of you out there who are working at studios where you are working on really large projects. Maybe you're doing feature films and you have 1,000 shots you need to deliver. Maybe you're at an animation studio doing a full animated feature and you've got 2,000 plus shots that you're working on. And thinking about having to populate everything manually in the UI might seem like a very long process. Don't worry, we have some tools that you can use like this importer that will make that a lot faster for you. So I'm going to hop back into the project that I set up here. I'm actually going to delete all of this and start from scratch, and I'm going to show you how you can use the importer to populate this project. If you need to delete anything in Ftrack, you can just highlight whatever that item is. You can see that I don't actually need to grab anything below this because it's all nested under the sequence. And we have this little trash can icon right here to delete things. So I'm going to click that, and then I'm going to save. And we want you to be 100% sure before you delete something. So you're going to need to type the word delete. And then you're going to need to confirm that, yes, you want to permanently delete this item. And now this is a permanent action. So we'd like to caveat that if you do need to delete anything on your projects, please make sure that there's no important information that's linked to it. Make sure there's no client notes, make sure there's no versions, make sure there's no time logs that you're tracking against it. We understand mistakes happen. So if you do delete something by accident, you can contact our support team and they can help you recover this from a backup. However, there is no way for you as an individual user to go in and recover this content. So just be mindful of that. This is stuff that I just created though. So I'm just going to wipe this out so we can get into importing. All right. So starting from scratch here, if you're going to be using our importer to populate your projects, you're going to go over to this import button right next to the create button here. And you can see we've got a few different formats that you can use. This third one down below here, update based on ID, we're not going to be going over today. Just to explain what this will allow you to do though, there is an attribute column that you can add into the spreadsheet that includes this unique identifier number. And if you export all of your project data from the task spreadsheet, maybe you're in an Excel document and you make some updates and you'd like to then import those updates back into Ftrack without having to update that information manually in your workspace, this import option will allow you to do that. It will relink the data correctly based off of these unique ID numbers. But we're just going to focus on these two options up here for today. So you can see we've got a row-based import and a column-based import, and this has to do with the template and the way that you've structured your spreadsheet when you're importing this data. And I have an example of both. So let me just get this up over here. So this is what the row-based import looks like. This is an example of something that you can set up. And I'll just draw your attention here. So the reason it is called a row-based import is if you look here at the shot name, we have all of these rows that link to a shot called shot 10. And each one of these rows is representative of a different task type that's going to be created against that shot. So this is a row-based import because your task information is being displayed in rows. I do remember that in the end of last week's session, there was a question about what if my task name is different from my task type? I have a little bit more of a granular name. An import like this would allow you to be able to track that kind of information. So I'll use the animation task here as an example. If my task name was going to be anim blocking, I could fill out the import with all of this information and that would name my task this, but then link it to the task type of animation. So you can use something like this to be able to track that kind of information when you're setting up your projects that way in your studio. Let me just get rid of that. So that is the row-based example, and the column-based example over here, you can see it is column-based because the task information that you're importing each has its own column that you're going to be utilizing. In this particular case, I am using bid time as the information that is going to be imported into the project, and I'll explain why a little bit later. If you did want to use this format for your task naming as well, you would just need to go ahead and add in an additional column. So this would be, say, anim name, something like that. Just populate all that. And you would add in the columns that you needed with the actual task name next to the other information that you're importing. It's very important, however, that each column you have has a unique name to it. So you will need to do something like this where you have the task type in the column header, just so that it can be mapped correctly. All right. So to use our importer, we're just going to copy all of the information from our spreadsheet. And we will then go ahead and paste that. Oops. Get that back. There we go. So select the row-based option because I copied the row-based spreadsheet. And I'm going to paste that in here. I know it looks messy. Don't panic. I'm going to hit next. So you can see now we've got this organized back into columns. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to map the column headers from our spreadsheet into the corresponding attribute columns we want that information to be imported into in Ftrack. So starting here, we'll go, oh, my mouse has decided to stop working. Let's try that again. Okay, let's start from here. I'm not sure what's happening with that column header. All right, so this will be episode description. We've got sequence name here. We've got sequence description. And you can see as well that as soon as you've selected an attribute, it will gray out, so you can't accidentally select it again as you're continuing with your mapping, which is really handy. So you'll just keep doing that and selecting which attribute you'd like that information to be mapped to, and you'll just continue doing that all the way down to all of the different columns that you're importing here. However, if you have a very templatized spreadsheet that you're going to be setting up and using every time you need to create a new project, what you can do, instead of having to manually map every single one of these column headers every single time, you can save mappings. So if I knew this was a standardized spreadsheet, I'm going to be doing all of my project setups with this, what I could do after I completed mapping all of these column headers is save this, which could be my row-based import, and then I would hit save. I'm not going to do it because I do have this one saved already. And what that will do is it will actually map all of those headers for me automatically, so I don't have to do it one by one every single time I'm setting up a new project. So to show you what that's going to look like, I'm going to go to Apply Mappings over here. This one's the episodic one, so I'm going to grab that. And that's also fixed that issue that I was having earlier, so that's great. And you can see that it's mapped all of the column headers for me. I didn't have to do that manually. It didn't map this one. The reason for that, if you can see, I know it's a bit grayed out, but if you can see in the background here in my site, I actually have my site configured for days instead of hours. So Ftrack just wasn't quite sure if that was putting it in the correct position. I can just go ahead though and manually correct that and put it to days there. Hit next. And I'm not going to complete this particular import because I don't want to have the start and due dates in there. I want to be able to use the scheduling tools we have within Ftrack. But I selected this import because I wanted to show this resolve the mapped values section here. So once you've gone to this page, if there's any information that Ftrack is not sure where it needs to map to, it's going to bring you to this page where you can correct that information. This is a very minor issue when you can tell because this little banner up top is green. If it was a more significant issue that needed to be resolved, it would be appearing in red. What this is just letting me know is that in my spreadsheet, I've got a lowercase p for progress and a lowercase s for started. And in the statuses that it's mapping to, it's uppercase. So it just wants to be 100% sure that it's selecting the right status. If I did need to change this for whatever reason, I can actually click in there and grab a different status to map to. I'm going to hit next because I'm okay with this. And it will just give me a summary of everything that it's going to import. And then I would hit import from there. I'm going to go ahead though and finish this off with the column-based import so that I don't have those start and due dates in there already. So let me grab my column-based example here and copy that information. And one thing that I quite like about this format for the import, when you're using bid days specifically, so it only works with bid days, is you can see that I've got a couple of tasks where the cells are completely blank. So I didn't put 0, they're just completely blank. And what Ftrack will know to do at the time of import is it will actually not create a task of that particular type if there is no bid time input against it. So if you have a situation where there's different task types that are required per object that you're creating, it's not always going to be the same thing across an entire project. This might help cut down time afterwards, having to go through and maybe delete or update statuses on tasks that are not actually going to be used. So I think that's pretty handy there. All right, so let's paste this in. And I will be using a mapping, but just quickly for any studios that might have that situation where your task type and your task name are not the same, to be able to map that per column header, what you're going to do is go into task here. You can see you get a list of the task types that belong to the schema for the project. And then you have a list of the attributes that you can map back to over here. So if I did have that additional column with the task name, I could map that over to name. So I'm going to apply my mapping to my column bid. Everything's mapped correctly. I'll go next. There's a summary of objects I'm creating. I'll go import. And this is just letting me know that that import is going to be completed in the background. I can close this. I could even go do something else in Ftrack if I needed to. And if I wanted to check on how my import is doing, I can go up on the top right corner to this Jobs tab. And you can see that it's letting me know that the import is running here successfully. And hopefully this shouldn't take very long. There we go. All right, so I've got all of my information now imported and ready to go in my project here. And a quick hotkey trick that I like. So you can see that I've got everything expanded. If I needed to go and close all of this down, it would probably take me a little bit of time. What I can do is up on the project level here, I can hold down Command or Control on my keyboard and collapse everything at the project level. And then I'm going to let go of Command or Control and expand it again. And you can see that it's collapsed everything very quickly. So that's kind of handy if you need to collapse your project. You don't have to go in and do that all at the same time. All right, so we've got some objects created on our project. Up next, probably we might want to go in and start assigning out some tasks to people. So doing this one by one per task, that might take a while. So if we wanted to do this in batch, and you can also do this for things like statuses and dates, we can do that. But let's go ahead and group this information a little bit differently so that we can do that a little bit faster. So we'll go up to our group by option up here. Right now it's set to none, but I can change it. You can see that I can group by any objects that exist in my project schema. I'm going to go to task here and select type. So I've now got everything grouped by the task type you can see here instead of by the sequence and the shot that they belong to. And I can now go in here and actually start assigning tasks to people. So I'm just going to hold down Shift and select a group of tasks. Then I'm going to double click in the assignee field and select the artist that I want to assign from the list there and just click out of it. And you can see that it's applied that same artist to that entire group of tasks. So you can, again, do that with statuses, with dates, so that you can batch update information all at once and make your changes a little bit quicker. So I'm just going to do this on a few sections here. So we've got a little bit of data to play around with. Feel free to follow along and do the same if you are following along today. And I'll just try and get this in here quickly. Get some layout too, so we have some stuff at the front of the pipeline for when we get scheduling. All right, there we go. So we've got some assignees in there, and now we should probably get into scheduling all of this work out, right? So before we get into scheduling, however, we might be looking at our attribute columns and realizing we don't have all of the information that we want visible. For instance, I've only got my due date column. I don't have anywhere to see the start date. I can see my bid days, but once the work gets underway, I don't have anywhere where I can see how much time my artists are actually logging against their tasks. So if I want to add that information into the task spreadsheet, I'm going to go up to the gear icon in the top right corner here. This is our settings menu. I'm going to hover over attributes. I'm going to hover over task. And this is a list of the out-of-the-box attributes that I have access to that I can add and remove to my task spreadsheet depending on what I want to see. So I've already mentioned I want to see my start date and my worked days. That's the other column I wanted. And what else can I add here? Let's do the over-under days. So this is going to show me once artists start logging time against these tasks, how much bid time I have remaining. So that's pretty important as well. So there we go. I've got my additional columns added in now, and I can just click on the column header and drag them to put them in the correct order. This one you can see is cut off a little bit, so I can just click on the edge there and expand it to drag it out. That looks better here. And you know what? I didn't put anything in this description field, and this is just kind of taking up some space right now. So I'm going to remove it. If you want to remove an attribute, same thing as adding, you're going to go to your settings, hover on attributes, hover on task, and just unselect description in this case. So there we go. I've got the information that I want to see. I'm also going to remove my grouping now and go back to none. So I'm going to go up here and adjust this. And I'm sure, especially if you work with things like spreadsheets, it might be very tempting to just go into the start and due date columns here and start selecting some dates on the calendar to start filling out your schedule. Again, if you're working on really big projects, though, this might take a bit of time. So how about we play around with our Gantt scheduler instead? So to activate our Gantt tool, you're going to go up to this little graph looking icon up here and click that on. So here is our Gantt tool. This timeline up at the top here, this will display the time range between your start and the end date that you set on your project when you set it up. You can click in here to kind of scroll through the time ranges in your project. You can kind of expand it out to see a wider range of time. And you can also zoom in and out with this little slider down here at the bottom. All right. And one thing that you can do when you are using the Gantt tool is you can actually paint in your schedule. So let me just filter down so it's a little bit easier to see. So I've just got my one shot here. I can just go into each task and kind of start painting things in like this, not over the weekend, but there we go. So that's pretty easy. I can just kind of put my dates in like that. That's way faster than clicking into little date cells and updating things. That's one option that we have. Quick side note, you may have been noticing that I'm hitting save manually every single time that I make any changes. If you want your changes to save automatically, you can click this little drop down and select that as an option. My personal preference is to save manually because I have these undo and redo buttons. So if I wanted to remove some of this, I can just click these. You can see that that's removing it all. I've got redo, I can put it back very easily. And if I have save changes automatically turned on, those buttons disappear. But completely personal preference, which one you'd prefer to have as you're putting in your schedules. All right, so that's one option we have. However, there's something else that we can do in Ftrack to make this a little bit faster. So I'm going to select a different shot that I didn't schedule here. And I'm going to go back to the gear menu. And I'm going to turn on match bid duration and auto link tasks. And I'm going to show you what you can do with these turned on. So this is a little trick to help you schedule even faster if you find this useful. For this to work, you need to make sure, first of all, that you've got some bid time put in against your tasks. So whether that's by an import or if you're doing it manually. And second is you need to make sure that your tasks are sorted in the correct pipeline order. Reminder from our session last week when we were going over our schemas, that means you also need to make sure that you've got your task types sorted in the correct order within your workflow area in the system settings. That will allow you to click on the column header here to put it in the actual correct workflow order for you. And now what I'm going to do, instead of actually painting in the schedule against every single task, I'm going to go to the shot row up top here. And I'm going to click on it, and I'm just going to drag my mouse. And it doesn't matter if I do it just a little bit, if I go super far, just click and drag and then let go. And I'm just going to zoom this out a little bit more. You can see that doing that has actually scheduled out every single task in the correct workflow order. And I zoomed in too far. There we go. And it's also matched the amount of bid time that was put in against each task. So you can see here for tracking, it was bid for 2 days. So that's scheduled out over Wednesday and Thursday. And then for layout was 2 days. So you can see it's scheduled here, skipped over the weekend and scheduled the second day here. And then animation was 5 days. So I've got my 4 days here, skipping the weekends again, and then the 5th day there, so on and so forth, all the way down that shot schedule. And of course, Your tasks are rarely going to only last the amount of bid days that you put in. You know that you need to factor in things like, is there a review that's going to happen? Is the artist working on another task at the same time? But at least you've got this nice starting point, and then you can come in here and you can actually drag these around, pull them out if they need to last a little bit longer, but you've got at least those initial dates in there nice and easily, and also in that correct workflow order. So that's something that might make scheduling a little bit faster for you. And another thing that you may have noticed was created here. I'm just trying to remove some of those date updates I just played around with. There we go. Let me save this. As you can see, there's these little purple arrows that have been created in between each of these tasks. These are links, and in Ftrack, this is just a visual representation of the dependencies between these tasks. So obviously, you know, your tracking needs to be done before your layout can start. Your layout needs to be done before your animation can start, so on and so forth. So it gives you that little visual representation. And you can also see this information in the sidebar. So if I go to my animation task here, and a reminder for those who are newer to Ftrack, the sidebar is where if you click on an object in your project, you can see all of the information that's linked to it all in one place. We're going to go to our links tab, and this is in reverse order. So let's do a little filtering here. So I've got an incoming link from layout. That means I'm waiting for layout to finish their work and pass it to me before I can start. And I've got an outgoing link to FX. So when I'm done with my work in animation, I'm going to pass it over to FX. So these little link buttons or arrows will allow you to have visibility on that information in your project. So that's something else that can be created automatically when you're using that little scheduling trick that I just showed. So that might be something helpful that you can play around with on your project. And another thing you can do with these arrows is, let's say I need to update the schedule for the second half of the shot, you know, everything from FX onward. I can highlight the FX task. So I've highlighted that there, and then hold down Command or Control on my keyboard and click on this task here. Actually, I'm going to shrink this down a little bit more. There we go, so you can see this better. So I'm going to hold down Command, click on the taskbar here in the Gantt, and shift that out. And you can see that that's bringing all of the dependent tasks with it as I'm pushing this along. So it just gives you some extra kind of hotkey tricks that you can play around with as well as you're updating your schedule. And if you find that's really helpful, you can also do this for an entire sequence. So I'm going to grab sequence 2 now that we haven't put any dates in for yet. Let me just open up some stuff here so we can see this in action. That should do. All right, so I'm going to do the exact same thing that I did on the shot level previously, but I'm going to do it on the entire sequence. So from straight up here, I'm going to click my mouse and drag, and then let go. And you can see that I've now got a shot schedule in for every single shot in this entire sequence. And you are probably looking at this and going, but every single one of these shots is starting on the same day. That's not ideal. What you can do from here is, let me just give us a little bit more time. You can grab these yellow bars that are appearing on the shot level, and you can drag these around to update the entire shot schedule. So I'm actually pushing this kind of oddly so that we have a little bit of data we can play with when we get into some of the other features here. But you can see you can kind of shift this around and update the schedule for each individual shot. So again, some things you can do to get some initial dates into your project much faster. This might cut down on some of the time it takes to start scheduling out projects, especially if they are a little bit large. So let's save this now. And the last thing I'll show before we close out the Gantt scheduler is some of the overlays that you can apply. So if you are a more visual person, we've got in the gear menu again on overlays, some different overlays that you can look at. So if you want to color code this by the task type, you can do that. That's going to be looking at whatever color you assign to these task types in your system settings. And for the other two, I'm going to hop back over to Napo, where there's just a little bit more data to play with, since this is a project that's kind of in progress here. Do some time traveling. There we go. And let's zoom this in a bit. So the next one we have is the progress or status. So you can see here, these are now color-coded blue because they are in progress. And the final one we have is the logged time overlay. There we go. So what this is doing is, timeline jumping around on me. What you can see here now is for these tasks, I've got this task here where there's a red bar over the top of it, and then this one here has a purple bar over the top of it. This is just a little quick visual cue of where you're at in terms of the bid time that's been used on these particular tasks. So for this lighting task with the red bar, that's letting me know that I don't have any bid time left to be used on this task. My artist has either logged all of it or gone over. And for the purple bar, it's just letting me know that I'm still in the clear. I've still got bid time remaining on this particular task. So that's just another little visual reference that you can use if you find that handy. And this information can also be surfaced on your attribute columns as well. So for the over/under days column that I added in before, you might see here, I've got a couple that are in the negative. And if I go to the column header, click on the drop down, go to cell formatting and go to negative alert, you can see that that's now highlighted in red. So that stands out to me, and I can very quickly catch where I may be over budget on the tasks in my project. You can apply this to the due date as well. This is going to be a bad example because this project's in the past. So yeah, lots of old dates there, but that's something else that you can use if that's useful for you. And I'll also just point out, I know this was a question I believe that came up last time as well, for the shot status. You can see I'm getting this little summary bar. So the color coding here is matching the color coding that is appearing on the statuses of the tasks that are linked to the shot. But I can click in here and actually update an explicit status on the shot. If I want that to display in the task spreadsheet instead, what I'm going to do, again, is click on that little drop-down menu in the attribute column header here, go to cell formatting and go to no summary. So now you can see here that I have the actual shot status appearing instead of that summary. So that's where you can go and update that depending on your preference and how you'd like to track things in your studio. The other thing here is this little functions feature here. You can see right now it's showing a percentage of the tasks that are done, but you have some other percentages that you can apply there depending on what you prefer to see. All right, let's go back to our project and let's start setting up some filters. All right, so let's get rid of the Gantt. So we've got some dates in, we've done some assignments. Now we might want to start setting up some different views that will help us while we're actually tracking the project once it's in progress. So if we want to start setting up some different filters, that's this button on the right-hand side here. We'll click up to open up the filter panel. We've got a few that are populated in here just by default. If I want to add any additional ones, I can go to the add filter button right here. You can see again, I've got a list of all of the objects that exist in this particular schema, and I can filter on any of that data. I am just going to stick with the task one for today because it's a little bit more straightforward. So let's say, for instance, I want to make sure that I've got somewhere where I can go and check what tasks are due in the current week. Obviously, those are going to be the most important. So I'm going to go to task and add in due date as one of the filters that I'm going to apply. So you can see we've got some different date ranges just populated automatically, but I can also select a specific date range as well. So let's click this week and see if we've got anything. Okay, perfect. So we've got some tasks that are due this week. We can see that information there. But if we'd like this to be a little bit easier to view rather than seeing it all nested underneath the shot in the sequence, maybe we can go back to that grouping we used earlier. Remember, that's up here, where we're maybe grouping by the task type. So let's just pop that over there. So there we go. We can see this week we've got a bunch of stuff coming out of tracking, a bunch of stuff coming out of layout, or we've got some assignees here as well. Maybe we want to see that based on who actually has work to complete this week. So we can go to task and group it by assignee instead. And you can see that now I'm seeing everything grouped by the user that has these tasks assigned to them. So lots of different options there, depending on how you want to have things displayed. I am just going to put it back to that. If I want to sort this to make sure I'm seeing everything in chronological order, I can just click on the due date attribute column. So you can see here it's starting from the earliest to the latest due. And let's pretend that we're a little bit ahead of the game here. All right, so let's say some of our team has already finished some work, and let's say this is in progress. There we go. All right. And likely, we probably want to filter out those tasks that are completed. They're done. We don't have to think about them anymore until the client starts giving notes on them potentially. So if we want to get rid of those, remember we talked about states when we were setting up our workflow schema and how those act as sort of an umbrella for all of the custom statuses that you're creating. So we can use the states to actually filter the information in our task spreadsheet. So if we don't want to see the approved and the completed, those are mapped to the state of done. We can go ahead and select not started and in progress, and you can see that that's filtered that out very easily. There are some other options though that we can play around with. So I'm going to get rid of that. And what if we did want to set up our filtered views with statuses instead? If we were going to do that the way that I just did it with the states, obviously we'd have to go through and select a lot of different statuses from here. Might be a little bit more complex to set up, but what we could do instead is I'm actually going to select approved and completed and just filter down to those, which is the opposite of what we want. However, if I hover over this filter parameter here, you can see there's these little buttons that pop up on the side, and this one in the middle here says invert. So I'm going to click this, and you can see what this has done is it's actually inverted the filter that I've set. So instead of showing me all of the tasks with a status of approved and completed, it's showing me everything except for the tasks that have a status of approved and completed. So this could be something else that you utilize to help you set up your filters much faster. You can just grab whatever is the least amount of data and set those in your filters, and then invert it instead of having to select a whole bunch of things and make a really, really big filter. So that's an option you have there. You can do that on any of the data that you select to filter by. And then there's also this pause button. So instead of removing the filter completely, you can just momentarily pause it. You can see that that's brought back all of the information that was being filtered out, and then I can easily reapply that again. And of course, there's other filters you can apply, like if you're looking for just a specific type or all of that information. I am just going to leave this for now. I think that this is probably a handy view that most people would want to have on their project. So if I want to make sure that I can easily refer back to this without having to go in and reset those filters every single time, I'm going to now save this as a view. So I'm going to go up here where it says view, and it says I'm looking at the default right now. And I'm going to click on the drop down, and I'm going to hit save as, and I'm going to give my view a name. So let's call this due this week, and hit save. And you can see now the name of the view has changed. It says I'm looking at my due this week view. It's showing as that one being selected in my list here. So I can now go back to my default view. So this is the one we actually started with before we swapped out what attributes were being shown. And then I can go back to my due this week view, and it's reapplied all of those changes that I made. The filters are back, my grouping is back. And you can see, of course, from this very long list that I have in my workspace that you can basically make as many views as you want for your projects. And another great thing about Ftrack is that these views that you create for yourself, they're not specific to just one individual project. These will actually follow along with you to whatever project you are working on. So if I go over to, let me actually go back to the default view and go back to Napo, you can see, again, I have that exact same list of views available. So these will follow you along. You're not going to have to recreate them every single time you start a new project, which I think is very handy, and it cuts down on a lot of that setup time. And if you want that view to also be available to other team members, you can also go in and share this. So back in this views area, I'm going to click on the drop down, and you're going to go to manage views. and then select the view you want to share from your drop-down list. So there's my due this week that I just created. And I've got the option to either share it with everyone. So that means that anyone who has a login to the workspace who can access this particular project will be able to, can access the task spreadsheet view on a project, this particular view. Or I can choose to share it with just individual users or user groups from down here. So I could go in through my list of users here and maybe share it with her. Or I've got my user groups down below. And this is something we're going to go over in the next session we're doing after the holidays, is how to set up those user groups. But let's say I want my production team to see this one. There we go. That means that all of the users that belong to that production user group, after I hit save, will then have access to view this particular view that I set up. So that's how you can share that out and make sure other team members are able to see that data in the same way. You can see just below here also, you have the ability to remove the view. So if you need to delete it for whatever reason, you can do that. You can only delete your own views. And you can also save them out as a default. So if you want to set up a view that will be the default view for the project, whenever anyone comes into the task spreadsheet for the project, you can click that to configure a specific view as the default there. Or if you want to, for your studio, set up your own default view that is going to be the default across every single project that you're working on, as soon as someone goes to the task spreadsheet, you could also save it as a global default as well. All right, so that is managing views. And the last thing that I'll show you very quickly to make sure we've got a little bit of time for questions here at the end is we've been looking a lot at just this task spreadsheet style view. If you maybe want to look at your data a little bit differently, there's also the option to set up task columns instead. And that looks a little something like this. And hold up, let me collapse my data a little bit better here. So this will display. Let's go back to there. There we are, that looks cleaner. All right, so what you can see now is instead of looking at the tasks in a list, like a drop down that way, we can see all of the task information across in these columns. I can collapse and expand them depending on which one I want to see. So I'll just show you how you can set these up very quickly. Let me go back to the default. So the first thing you're going to do is you're just going to strip away all of the attributes from the task spreadsheet view here. So again, settings, attributes, task, and we're just going to uncheck everything here. There we are, so fairly empty view. And now we're going to go back to our gear menu. We're going to hover over attributes, and instead of going to task, we're going to focus on task columns. So you can see now I've got a list of all of the different task types that exist in this particular schema. And from here, I can just go in and select what attributes I want to display in the task column when it does appear. So I'll just grab a few that are similar to what I had configured in the task spreadsheet before. Let's say that. And go back to my shots view. So there you go. You can see that I have all of the information visible for specifically the compositing task types. I can drag and drop to reorder these the same way that I was doing before. I can expand or shrink this down however I need. And I can just keep going back into the gear menu, attributes, task columns, and adding in as many different task columns as I need here, as I'd like to see in this particular view. So that again. I won't swap as many around. And of course, layout comes before compositing. So if I want to change the order of these, I can just click on the top portion where the task type name is and just drag and drop to reorder those as well. And once I've got all of the task types I want, I will just, again, go back in here, go to Save As, give it a name. I will have that view nice and saved. And then I can also go into Manage Views and share that with anyone as well. So that is the basics of getting everything set up for your project. So you can start going in and tracking everything properly. And we've got about 6 minutes left to go over questions. However, before we get into that, just very quickly, yes, we do have some more homework for you. So please go and continue to populate your project. If you need to add in some more objects to it in order to get the value out of what we're doing here today, you could try our import tool. If you want, if you'd like a template to work off of, I actually have copies of the import spreadsheets that I was using today that you can download copies of from my Google Drive. So I'm putting that into the chat right here. Hopefully those links will update. There you go. So if anyone would like to grab those and download them for themselves, please go ahead and do so. And then start playing around with the data in your project. Put in some schedules. You can try that match bid duration and auto link tasks trick that I was showing you with the Gantt scheduler. Batch update some information, put in some assignees, update some statuses, and then of course play around with the grouping and the filtering and try to maybe create some saved views.
Thanks so much for attending. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.